kick things off by all accounts because you're nodding at me. So I'm taking that as good to go, Kenny. That's
Get the debts there, did you, Adrian? Yeah.
I have nothing. Was the look there? Right, it's 8:05 on this Friday morning. Here's a look at what's happening on the back pages. Starting with the Irish Independent this morning, it is watch your back, Johnny. Cheika warns his former number 10 of Carbery threat to Ireland place is the main headline here from Rory O'Connor, who is in Brisbane ahead of the first test tomorrow morning, which is just after 11 a.m. Irish time. And a picture of Johnny Sexton there with the little yellow bib on him, which indicates that he is not going to be playing in the game. He's amongst the subs tomorrow. So Joey Carbery gets his position, and Michael Cheika knows a thing or two about having to drop Johnny Sexton, and was pretty interesting in that this morning. He says that he would fairly regularly give him a bit of it. When he had to tell Sexton, he would have coached him in his early days when he was coming through at Leinster. So obviously at that time there would have been lots of conversations about, well, look at Johnny, you're not starting this week. And he said he used to leave him with Sexton would leave him with a flea in his ear.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Even from a young age.
He would have been happy, he would have let him know.
22, 23 probably at that point.
Yeah, doesn't surprise in terms of what Johnny's achieved through his career. Doesn't surprise that kind of mentality was always existed, even at that young age.
Coleman urges Irish sides not to sell stars cheaply. So this is on the back of Graham Burke, who's been heavily linked with a move to Preston. They're talking about the fees, obviously, that Coleman himself went to Everton from Sligo for 60k. He's kind of saying fees need to move well beyond that.
Yeah, absolutely right, man. At the very least, if a club's going to... I'll be disappointed to see Graham go, because at the end of the day, he's got his Ireland opportunity off the back of his performances from Shamrock Rovers this season. That shouldn't be forgotten. So this kind of old adage, you got to go over to prove yourself at the highest level before you can really be considered. That's kind of Graham's kind of disproved that theory. But I understand if it's a personal ambition to go back across the water. But at the very least, the League of Ireland clubs need to be compensated to the level
properly,
that they should be. Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned Seamus Coleman's fee. I don't know what add-ons were in there, but it's like, I mean, if they didn't get significantly more eventually than 60 grand, it's a disgrace. I think
there were other add-ons and kick-ons. I think, in fact, even down to some of his junior clubs after that, it wasn't just Sligo the benefit, but still, when you're talking about the marquee fee being 60k, it's pretty grim. 300k is the figure that's been linked with him, which is certainly a bit more realistic. I know you lads were talking during the week about when are we going to get the first €1 million League of Ireland player.
Well, I remember doing my pro licence a few years ago now. I remember somebody came in for a talk. It was the Latvian manager, an English fellow. Was it Latvia or Lithuania he was in charge of?
Right.
And he put a thesis together in terms of comparisons between the League of Ireland and the domestic league over in Latvia, kind of very similar, even on a smaller scale over there. And he listed the last kind of 15 to 20 players who'd left Latvia for significant money and joined other European sides, even in England. I think Marian Parhars maybe was the most expensive, went to play for Southampton. He went for close to $1 million. I think it was €1 million at the time, but there was some chunky fees then.
How long ago was that?
So it is some time ago, but it kind of blew me away because it was like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. These were the type of fees that they were getting, and he was saying, no, we insist on getting. Obviously, there's other factors come into criteria in terms of getting players on longer contracts. A lot of lads League of Ireland 1 year rolling contracts. The contract finishes, the clubs aren't in a position to demand a certain fee as opposed to somebody's on a 2-3 year contract. So it strengthens your position at a club. So there's the argument, get players on longer contracts, but that's a bigger commitment financially. Clubs might be in a position to do that. I understand that. So it's kind of, you're kind of chasing your tail constantly.
Almost a proof of purchase now with the number of players that have gone over there that have, I mean, at least proven themselves to be way beyond 60k. Because Seamus Coleman is not even that long ago, and I mean, there's players before him.
Seamus Coleman has been one of the best players in his position in the world, in the world.
But the point is that he's not an outlier. Like, there's a whole bunch of players that went before him that came directly from the League of Ireland that succeeded up to a very high level. There are players that have followed since, and a lot of them, Preston seems to be the feeder club almost now. But there's enough evidence to suggest that these players, they actually value, needs to be much more significant than that.
I'd agree with that, but I would also say, in the current, like, obviously not judging for inflation now, but in the current financial landscape, it would be one hell of a miss if a League of Ireland player went to the UK for €1 million. Like that has to be an outrageous talent that all the scouts that set up shop in Ireland and try and scout these guys from a young age, that they've missed an open goal there if there's somebody who's worth €1 million for the League of Ireland. And that's just being realistic. Like Pahar's was one hell of a miss if you went for that transfer fee. Obviously they just didn't do their work right when they were scouting the Latvian leagues.
I think that it's not always a miss actually, and I think that Graham Burke is almost proof of that he had obviously been over there and things just didn't work out for him, and so at that stage of his career this is what he needed to do. So it wasn't that he was missed, he's actually, and frequently that is the path. Like, you know yourself, the number of players that go over to academies is enormous, and loads of them are coming back to play in the League of Ireland.
Yeah, not necessarily because technically they're not the required level, Owen, or they're not
there might be a whole range of factors.
Yeah, emotional stuff. There's a load of stuff kind of off-field stuff can knock you sideways. You need to come back and just go again, almost just clear your head, find your confidence again, a little bit maturity as well from a footballing point of view, and also as a person as well, and you can step up again, which clearly Graham is doing. But I'd love to see that. So that money's got to be coming back into the clubs first and foremost, into the league, and obviously the kind of ripple effect of that. And so we are talking about stadiums and the need for investment and stuff. This isn't only the answer, but certainly more money coming into the football clubs on a regular basis. When you do sell your talent, you certainly get value for money, because it's galling to see that some of the players, Seamus is probably a good example as any, going across. And I think the players themselves would like to see it, because players have a real attachment, I think, to the clubs over here in Ireland that they live. So it's not a case of the player thinking, I don't want the club getting the money, I want it in my pocket type thing. I think genuinely the players would love to see the clubs compensated as well for the part they play in their development as a player. So hopefully we'll see more of it.
The other thing that's here is just the pairings. Obviously, Rory McIlroy paired with Jordan Spieth and Phil Mickelson. We'll come to that a bit later. I know Kenny's going to actually tell us who his tips are for the US Open, which starts next week.
Never reveal. Not before the tournament.
The last time we were in here talking golf,
you pulled one out of me. You went fishing. You
didn't give me anything.
Bit like that Ireland story at the start of this show.
Sunday,
you went fishing.
I got a text saying, oi. Paul Casey is definitely one of them.
Paul Casey, was Paul Casey, but that's a story as well. He rented himself out a place prior to the tournament in August, and he couldn't done his back in the bed, which seemed a really trivial thing. But I thought, and he never gone for 2 days. He put a great run together the last
day was unbelievable. Yeah,
he's one I consider. I want to tell you, he's one I consider again for the US Open. I think he's got the game to play well around there.
As long as he doesn't have a bad back.
I did the same myself last Saturday morning. I was due to be going to play the Paul McShane golf day last Sunday, and I put my back out.
Wearing coppers the night before?
Some classic Adrian. Do you want to talk about the Peter Canavan piece?
So it's the next step in Tyrone versus Sean Kavanagh. To be fair, it's you're obviously going to lead with the headline regarding Sean Kavanagh here, because it's such a great story, really, and it's had a lot of legs so far. To be fair to Peter Canavan, his column today is not about Sean Kavanagh. It is just the most striking thing from it. So I might just read out exactly what he said about it. It's literally 3 paragraphs. So he says, "For me, it was a pity Sean wasn't more vocal when he was inside the camp, because it is much easier to affect change from within. Sean is entitled to his opinion, of course, and he's entitled to express it, but I think he could have been conveyed in a little less divisive manner. To see a wedge driven between our most successful manager and one of the greatest players Tyrone has ever produced only serves the interests of those outside the county." So I don't want to say here that Peter Canavan is going after Sean Kavanagh today, but it is the next thing that's been said.
Sounds like it kind of is. Like the context of this is that Sean Kavanagh last week was very critical. So he just retired from Tyrone.
Yeah, I heard the original story.
He was very critical of Mickey Hart's tactics, particularly around, and I mean many would say that that's fairly justifiable commentary, that they were pretty badly exposed in the semi-finals against Dublin last year, that this was kind of a reasonable enough sort of thing to do. And he has been actually outspoken enough. I don't know what sort of relationship himself and Mickey Hart have. I've always suspected that it's not great, because I think Kavanagh, even when he was a player, would say things at times that I often felt was sort of rubbing Mickey Hart up the wrong way. And I think he's totally, he's now a pundit, so he's no longer a player as part of that Tyrone setup. Like, he's not doing his job if he's thinking. John Giles was at, we did a Euro 88 special at Vicar Street last night. Brilliant show, by the way. Check it all out on offtheball.com. But John Giles was talking about his initial route into punditry, and he spoke about the idea that he had to be honest. He had to call it like it was. Like, there's no point in him sitting there and going, well, I know this thing or I think this thing, but I'm not going to say that due to some sort of a loyalty to whoever. He's got to.
But likewise, I think it's fair comment as well. What Eoin has read out there. If the management says if these comments were opinions weren't conveyed when he was a member of the squad, I'm sure if he's a strong personality, one more experienced players in the squad, I'm sure he probably did. So I've no problem with that. If you made these views known at the time and tried to facilitate that change while he was a player and improve things, and it was coming from the right place, to step outside and say, he said that's absolutely fine. But if the insinuation there, which seems to be, well, it's just the first thing we've heard about it.
I remember
these
him
opinions
saying
weren't
stuff like
forthcoming.
that public. Maybe he wasn't. Nobody knows what he was doing internally. Only the people who were involved internally. But I remember him saying stuff like that while he was a player publicly.
The point is here that Peter Canavan and Sean Kavanagh only overlapped for a few years. The age difference here is around a decade. So when he's saying for me it was a pity Sean wasn't more vocal when he was inside the camp, either A, Sean Kavanagh was young when Peter Canavan was still a Tyrone player, which is the truth, or B, he's heard second-hand information, Sean actually never voiced his opinions.
Well, Gavin Devlin came out afterwards and said that we've had loads of Tyrone captains over the years, I think Canavan included, who would have been very vocal internally, but that Sean never said. Why didn't he mention anything? So I'm assuming that's a reaction to that line.
Presumably, so he's buying that line as the full and complete truth. And I'm not saying it's not. It could well be. We don't know what was going on. We don't know how vocal Sean Kavanagh really was here. I don't know. I think it's hard because it's your first step into punditry. But it's also the most important time in your punditry career because you have the most relevant information out of anybody in your early days because you've literally just stepped out of the camp.
Diminishing returns, like that's.
And it's not easy. There's still an obvious attachment between the player and the county. There, he's only. How long has he been? Has he walked away from the county?
Just last year.
Yeah, it's his first year as a pundit.
That's not tough. And like I said, that's an honest surprise of what he thinks of the team, and it's coming from the right place. I think it's fair. And if he was kind of offering those opinions during his time in a positive manner within the squad and trying to influence things and make things better, I think that probably strengthens his case. But like I said, I'm on the outside.
I think they're saying that he wasn't, but I mean, ultimately, fair play to him. The more that he gives as a pundit, the better, as far as I'm concerned. That's my take on it. Right, the Times Ireland, for what it's worth, Kenny.
Pretty selfish, you don't want me saying so.
Ireland are expecting to win 3-0. Says Michael Cheika. There's, needless to say, Michael Cheika on the eve of a test against a country that he used to coach in. He's pretty interesting.
Yeah, but that's great. What's that comment meant to be? That's almost like little mind games, as if they expect. But that's great. That's the mindset. Exactly what I'm sure that is the mindset in the Ireland team, and it should be because we're playing that well. We are that good individually, collectively. We're that well prepared. Why shouldn't we be going there with that particular mindset?
Conversely, he's in the Australian dressing room saying these bleeps are over here thinking they're going to beat us 3-0.
But to throw that out there for me, I'll be taking that as a positive. For me, that's almost 1-0 up for the Ireland team, for him to come out. I'm not saying he's scared, but he's clearly concerned with the quality of the Irish team that's coming over. If he's throwing that kind of statement up to kind of rattle us, I'd love to see the Ireland manager players come out and say, we are expecting to win this game 3-0. That's how much we rate ourselves. That's how much I rate my teammate who's going to be on my left and the one onto me right. Yeah, we do feel as if we're that good.
You've rarely seen an Australian voluntarily put themselves in the back foot. What he's doing here. So I guess you're right. It's one up for Ireland, I think.
Absolutely.
It's good mass stereotyping there on.
Well,
I mean, it may well be accurate in this case, but
it's completely accurate.
Coleman aims to be sharper, writes John Fallon up here as well. Seamus Coleman's been out and about in the media in the last while. And Jackson close to French deal, writes Kieran O'Rahlig here. Paddy Jackson could be set to join Stuart Olding in France. He closes in on a move to Perpignan, who are just been promoted on a large budget, as Kieran O'Rahlig writes, to their return to the top 14. So perhaps Paddy Jackson is about to secure himself a new rugby contract. The Irish Examiner, meanwhile, up to speed, asks Ronan O'Gara on the Johnny Sexton, Joey Carbery dynamic here. So more reflections on, and I mean, nobody better to be writing on it, on the Joey Carbery at 10 thing. It's like writing about the disaster of the last World Cup and how we didn't have enough players to backfill positions when players went down. And so, like, we are very reliant on Johnny Sexton, and the idea that we'd have a player that we believe hasn't actually yet had the proper exposure really to the position, and that's kind of, I mean, the big factor obviously in his move to Munster as well. What's he going to be like as a 10? Giving him cockpit hours in that position in a full test like that.
I would have thought it's essential.
He's doing it across the front row. He's doing it in other positions as well. Like, it's prudent stuff. It might be a player management thing in terms of the amount of minutes obviously the players have played this season, but if it's a consequence of that, it's a great consequence that we can get second tier players. Ultimately, they're not first 15 players exposure at that high level.
Yeah, I just think it's absolutely essential. He's obviously got huge ability, young lad. I've obviously seen a little bit of him play, but I suppose apart from his technical attributes, there's almost the kind of mental side as well, in terms of how can he cope with against top quality opposition in kind of a more of a pressurised environment. I know these are friendlies to a certain extent, but that friendlies probably don't exist in rugby union. So going down to Australia, playing 3 test matches down there and throwing him in that kind of environment, he's gonna learn a huge amount about the player, about this the psyche of the player, the psychology, the mental strength to complement those obvious attributes for rugby attributes, technical attributes, which he has.
We'll fly through a couple of these. This is the Irish Times here, and it's rugby all the way. Jerry Thornley in Brisbane. Schmidt wary of Australian flair in the first test. So Joe Schmidt, in reply to Michael Cheika, is very much talking him up, and you can see Cheika amongst his players there. Cheika in vintage form as his flattery tactics hit the target. He's got a bit of the Mourinho, says Michael Cheika. It doesn't matter what he says. People always say
not that miserable, surely, is he?
Some sort of mind games at play is the general sense of that. You're a brave man, Joe. Michael Cheika puts pressure on Schmidt over Carbery pick, writes the Irish Daily Mail this morning, and more reflections there on the GAA season from Clare's John Conlon. And the Irish News, we can take a look at. I mean, this is the big story of the week. It's the Westmeath Armagh game. Brendan Crossan writing about this. It got a bit fiery last year when they met in the qualifiers, and ultimately Westmeath went out by, I think, about 5 points on that occasion.
You confident?
You know my levels of confidence when it comes to Westmeath, particularly this year. No, I'm not at all confident. They're going to get beaten, I would almost guarantee it. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, to turn around the players, and Kelly, the manager, is talking about they're very much the walk of moon and this sort of stuff, but there's inexplicably a bunch of other players who just aren't involved in the panel, and I wonder why that is, and hopefully maybe some of those rationales might sort of come out over the next while. Finally, just the Racing Post this morning, just in with a shout there. Del Potro can give 1-8 Nadal a serious test in the semi-finals as the Roland Garros last 4 approaches. That's it for me on those.
On the back of the Heralds, they're going with the Dubs. Focus is key for Dublin. Injured O'Sullivan, guarded against complacency and big on humility. You've also got Coleman talking about Declan Rice, who's made for captaincy. He's got leadership qualities that you were talking about there, Kenny. Declan Rice, according to Seamus Coleman. An interesting lead on the back of the Mirror. They're kind of targeting all those Manchester United fans out there. Dread for Red Fred. Casemiro tackle leaves United sweating on new £52 million stars fitness. So a seemingly, it's hard to make out from the pictures here on the back of the Mirror, but a seemingly innocuous challenge from Casemiro on Fred. Although he's at full stretch.
Yeah.
It's a slide tackle. Like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with slide tackling in training.
Are they locking shoulders? They're
not locking shoulders. It's kind of hard to make out on screen right here, but you can see he makes contact with the ball. It's full contact training session. You're getting ready for the World Cup. I mean, what's wrong with a slide tackle?
The report that I read was that Casemiro had landed awkwardly on Fred's ankle. But I mean,
Casemiro is literally on the ground here. Fred is standing up.
Any awkward landing at all. Have you seen much of this guy, Kenny? It was actually, I mean, I hope he's going to play, because I think that it adds another dimension to the Brazil games to actually see what United are getting next season. Have you seen much of him? Or
I've seen a little bit of him play. Look, I'll be interested in where Mourinho sees him, the fit into that Manchester United midfield. We've spoken about it before, whether he's going to commit himself to that kind of midfield 3 next season. This lad to me looks as if he can play almost that hold'em one, and maybe as a number 8, more of an advanced midfield position. We spoke about the need for improving in there in terms of the likes of Herrera not being good enough, need better quality in there. And over that, he's been linked as well, which is interesting to see if that's got any legs in it. If that was the case, I think you'd have to put question marks over the future of Pogba if he was bringing players in the quality of Fred and Verratti, trying to incorporate Pogba and Matic as well into that midfield would be near impossible. So yeah, but it's what they needed, United. It's what they needed all years. Centre midfield has been a problem for them. He's obviously recognised, he knows Mourinho, so he's doing the right thing. He's trying to strengthen that area of the pitch, what he badly needs to do.
On the back of the Irish Daily Star then, it's Coleman's guilt trip, reads the big headline here, and 2 bullet points here that say, I could have made a difference versus Danes, and I could have helped Koeman keep his job. You've also got the Fred story there, and €60 million to NAB ace, so that's Nabil Fekir, the French international who's on his way to Liverpool by the sounds of things. On the back of the Sun then, it's more of this Ireland's disappointment here. I'll be watching on TV thinking, that could have been us. World Cup heartache, what a shame. S. Ifada AM.
I like that.
Yeah, it's good. So just
you won't be watching that opening game of the tournament now. That Russia versus Saudi Arabia. Oh dear!
Game of the tournament.
Most of the population won't be watching that.
Oh, yeah,
you won't be tuning in for that, will you?
Well, the adrenaline rush of the World Cup having finally arrived will get you through that one, no?
God, no. Even the big build-up, there's about an hour and a half build-up to it. It's like torture, even more so. I won't be watching that. In fact, I looked at the fixtures Friday, they're not great either. Iran playing Friday.
Friday, not Spain, Portugal, no?
Friday, maybe. Yeah, Friday night, yeah, maybe. Although I'll be in Dublin, I might be at a game. I might be out watching the games.
Well, you've really kind of...
me out for the first weekend of the World Cup.
you've really lit the dynamite of my excitement for the World Cup.
Well, is that not a general thing? I mean, it really seems as if it's been a real slow burn. I don't know, maybe it's just mumble isolated from the majority of the population.
I think once it starts and the sort of dynamics start to play
but usually there's a little bit of that, you know what I mean, momentum leading up to a big story, a bit of a buzz around people talking, a bit of chitter-chat around the place, but...
To be fair, Russia-Saudi Arabia is the worst opening game in the history of the World Cup. No question about that.
Two solid democratic nations right there.
Yeah. The one thing that has...
Another conversation, you're right.
Like you talk about the slow burn of excitement that always comes with the World Cup that we mightn't have seen. The other thing that slow burns its way into public consciousness every single year is like, you know what? England might have a chance. And that's actually the story on the back of the UK titles this morning. From Rashford with love. England head for Russia in good heart after clinical warm-up win. They beat Costa Rica 2-0 last night. Marcus Rashford.
It's a bad play on words there, Round. You could come up with something better than that.
They went with
Rashford, Russia, is that it? Is that the only common denominator?
Alliteration, yeah.
Yeah, it's a tiny bit better on the Daily Telegraph, but they clearly didn't see each other's back pages because they went with the same a similar picture and a pretty similar headline. To Russia with hope, they say. Rashford's stunning strike gives England the perfect send-off, they say. It was an unbelievable goal. A perfect send-off. That's all suggesting to me that the press in England, the public in England, they're just starting to think, you know what?
Well, they're not. It's interesting because obviously, I live over there and it has been noticeable, deleted to this tournament for the first time. That expectation level is just
Is that Gareth Southgate has sort of pulled the pin on that and said, listen, let's
I think he has played it very well, Southgate. I have been impressed with how he's taken the job on, but just a general feeling amongst the journalists in particular, they're the ones who stoke at back pages, bum. But there has generally been a bit of a, you know what, let's just take a step back. Yeah. Let's just, we know we're not going to win it, but it's a young squad there, some good young players. The dynamic seems to be good. And just less pressure on the shoulders of the player. You sense that even listening to the players talking and stuff, just sense it's a little bit different this time around. And whereas it isn't perfect, the team, for me it's still a very dangerous team. When you kind of forget about that kind of defensive unit and look a bit higher up the pitch, particularly in those forward areas, they got some real talent there just in terms of the energy, pace, dynamism in the team. It's the type of team that'll really terrify a number of the teams, even the bigger teams over there in the later stages of the tournament.
The one thing just to point out as well, because I know I'd be gutted if I missed this, a lot of the newspapers are advertising their wall charts for tomorrow and Sunday. So if you're going to get your wall chart, Kenny, this is the weekend to do it. You'll get a nice big one on one of the Sundays as well.
There's some good stuff out there, Kenny, let's face it.
I would know, Adrian, I'll take your word.
You've never had a wall chart?
Oh, I did back in the day. I'm thinking me ma's like growing up,
yeah.
Oh no, I do. A bit of nostalgia there. They were great. Yeah. I do remember every game going in and filling in the chart. You go beyond
sort of filling out the scores. I used to sort of get very enthusiastic for the first round. Maybe first round of games, maybe the second round of games, and then after a while, you'd start filling them in again, maybe around the semi-finals. Like a
big blank space in the middle of the tournament. No, I was pretty relentless with it, I must admit. Yeah, what was part of the kind of
Well, you'd have been looking up Airtel, Kenny, as well at the time, you know what I mean, trying to get the results and stuff.
Is it unacceptable to do it as an adult? I think not. I think it's completely fine, isn't it?
Worrying, I think, a better word.
Yeah, I definitely didn't do it for Euro 2016 or anything.
One other story that we wanted to bring to your attention was the statement that was released. This is the front of the Irish Daily Mirror that was released by Katie Taylor yesterday in relation to the shooting at Bray Boxing Club. As you can see, the statement there in full on offtheball.com, covered in front of the Irish Daily Mirror, as it is in a lot of the newspapers. Katie's agony for shot Bobby. Boxer breaks silence over killing and attempted murder of her dad at gym. So I think there's just been so much stuff written and spoken about in relation to Katie Taylor around this shooting at the Bray Boxing Club this week. She wanted to put on record, I guess, her own thoughts and her own position in terms of her dad, who obviously was shot as part of this attack at Bray Boxing Club during the week. And, she talks about the fact that they have been estranged for the last number of years, that and that dynamic continues, I guess. But obviously expressing her condolences as well to the victim of that shooting, the fatality from that shooting as well. So that, needless to say, dominates a lot of the front pages today.